Right, ladies and gentlemen, there is trouble in paradise. One of the nation's sweethearts, the UK's biggest power couples, have seen their relationship somewhat fall apart in the last couple of weeks. And to say it is on the rocks would be an understatement. And by the way, we are not talking about Tommy Fury and Molly May. We are talking about Boehly-Eghbali. What is it with power couples sort of drifting apart? Because we had a bit of a...
I was going to say, I thought you were talking about us at the start of that. And,
I was sleeping in the doghouse a few weeks ago, wasn't I?
You're in trouble. Again, you just need to stop punching me. It's quite obvious. I know you've got that bent up aggression. I know you've got, a semi-big fight this weekend. The guys don't really know too much about that fight. I'm sure they've not heard that much about it.
Do you know, right? You banter. A lot of people don't know our box. I thought I fucking drop it in there every 2 seconds. But a lot of people are like commenting on my Instagram post the other day, being like, I didn't know you boxed.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether they're being sarcastic.
I think they're being sarcastic.
Yeah.
Because I hear about it on every single video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
There is a boxing channel if you want to subscribe to it. Joe Night Boxing.
And don't post much off of it. Because we love being here with you
the
lot.
Football's better.
Should we talk about the whole fallout of Boehly and Eghbali?
Yeah.
And do you know what? I said to you when you came into the studio, I said, it's a bit boring, really, isn't it, all this? And you said, well...
I don't think it's boring. I don't think it's boring at all. I think everyone right now in the Chelsea fan base, and in fact, more so from outside Chelsea, I think, are interested in this story. I think there's a huge amount of drama around it. I think this is another episode on what is the serial sort of like, melodrama, around Chelsea Football Club. And
Would you use the word debunked? Do you think we can do a bit of debunking here?
I think we might do a bit of debunking. I think we might do a bit of reassuring on the news front. I think we might confirm a few things that people are concerned on.
Because there is a lot of general consensus. Is that a word? What am I looking for?
I don't know what you're looking for right now. Contemptuous?
The general consensus?
Consensus, do you mean?
Consensus? Is that the one?
Okay.
Anyway, basically, Boehly good, Eghbali bad.
Yeah.
There you go.
Before we get into, and I'll give some context, before we get into that, why do you think that is? Do you think it's just because he's the face of the club right now?
I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that Boehly is media facing, and Boehly will do interviews, but not as much anymore, but especially on the come up, and as well, look, Clearlake was never a secret. We always heard about Clearlake when we heard about the consortium that was buying Chelsea Football Club, but it's always nice to put a face to the bidder, and the face around Chelsea was Todd Boehly. Now, me and you, without thinking we're Albert Einstein over here, we've, for I would say months now, and probably stretching nearly as far back as a year, we have been questioning just how hands-on and just how involved Todd Boehly has been in the decision-making and the day-to-day running of Chelsea Football Club. I think that's fair to say, right?
Definitely.
So why don't we start off and you can give us a little recap of the situation that has arisen or at least has been reported in the last couple of weeks? Because although it's been reported in the last couple of weeks, it looks like it's been brewing for quite a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, why don't we rewind all the way back to when Roman Abramovich, unfortunately, literally go back in time, do the little back in time. When was it? 2021, 22? I can't even remember the years now. Obviously, Roman Abramovich was forced to get rid of the club. We went through that.
Do you want to be Roman?
I can be Roman if you want to. Yeah.
Oh, I can be Roman.
You could be. Why don't you do the accent? You'll be better at the accent.
I am being forced by UK government to sell the club.
Do you know what? As Russian accents go, that was actually pretty decent.
Go on, your Todd.
Your accent. I want to buy Chelsea Football Club.
I want to know if there is any bidders for my.
Well, look, I've got a pretty good bid, and I've got a great plan and a great formation. The formation that I want to play for Chelsea Football Club. Don't know if you've heard of this one, Roman. Is 4-4-3. Have you thought about that?
It is not possible.
You should think about that. That is a great formation. I've heard about it. Now, what I want to do is I want to go around on a tour all around Europe, and I want to sign some of the best players.
And I want to change the name to the Stamford Blue Sox.
Yeah. The Stamford Blue Sox. Right, anyway, enough messing around. We were going back in time. So
should we just, without glossing over him, I do miss him, didn't you?
Oh, I do miss him.
Feel like pure shit, just want Roman back.
Do you remember when he first signed and the Russian song came on in Stamford Bridge and we clapped every game to that Russian song? My dad had the hat.
Not the first time
he bought the Russian hat. Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments if
Or
you have
made a
as
Russian
well.
clap for you.
So Roman had to sell, and we had a series of bids coming in. The bid that ended up winning was a bid that was very encouraging for us, in that what it said is they said they were going to buy for the club for a decent rate, and also they were going to invest in the club. They were going to buy a new stadium. Those people that won it were consortium. Obviously, the way that this works is you're never going to be able to find one person that can front what was near enough £4 billion worth of investment. So what happens is a lot of different investors all get together and they buy different stakes. So what transpired was that Boehly was in charge of a minority stake, along with Vice and a couple of other people that were in with him, very wealthy investors. And the minority stake, I think, was around 39%, something like that, right? So it's very much, they wouldn't win in an argument if they were going. Now, the other side of that was Clear Lake Capital.
That's 39.5%. That is a minority stake in terms of what the word minority actually means in this sort of context. But it's quite a big chunk because, by the way, it's more than Ineos have got.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, look, they have an agreement in which they are in charge of the sporting operations of the club. So I think, even though they have a minority stake, I mean, what's going on at Man United is very weird. Yeah, I know. Okay, fine, the shit. Right. So the other side of that is then Clear Lake Capital. Now, I'm going to put my hands up. I got really confused here. I thought Boehly was part of Clear Lake Capital, and we need to distinguish the two. So Boehly is completely separate. Clear Lake Capital own the majority stake, and they are sort of like private equity. Friends with benefits. They're private equity. They're the people that bring in incredible amounts of money from individual investors, collate it into one big pool, and then they invest in companies. Now, I suppose the key difference and what the boys are setting their stalls up is Clear Lake Capital are people that are out for relatively short initial returns. They need to get their investors and they need their money out pretty quickly. And Boehly will say that he's a long-term investor that is happy to invest his money over a 20, 30-year period, with the fact that then, the club improves, and he sees it as more of a long-term vision. So that's where they set their stalls apart. I think Boehly was really interested in the transfer side, and I think he was really interested in sort of like building a club and being the front man. Yeah. I think he wanted to do almost like the Roman role, sort of linking it back to the past era. Whereas at the start, Eghbali was very much sort of like, I would say, he wasn't the chairman. Do you remember when we had, Ken Bates was the chairman, the front man? Like, Boehly was that guy. Eghbali was definitely not sort of like forward facing. And we've said that, in terms of his press conference. I didn't even know
about Eghbali until... No. Couple of months,
but he was away, around. He was, he went on all the tours. He was pictured with Boehly. He was always in the boxes. He would often go to games.
The pitch with Boehly that time.
Walked across the pitch.
Apparently Sterling got a bollocking.
Yeah, exactly. And also he's from the get go apparently been in the changing room as well. Yeah. So he's very much behind the scenes, but very much involved. So does that summarise the position?
More or less. Yeah. And then obviously it was around the time of the League Cup final. We started to realise, hold on, we haven't really seen Boehly and Eghbali together in ages. Yeah. Then they made an appearance, and both looking pretty fresh, pretty dapper, to be fair. Boehly had a haircut, remember when he had that trim?
I did, yeah. He looks great. Looks great. Yeah, fair play to you, Todd.
And then after that, we very rarely saw them together again. And there had long since been rumours of a rift in the camp, basically, that their visions weren't aligned, they weren't on the same page, and obviously that was only cemented even further with the handling of the Mauricio Pochettino sacking, wasn't it? Because Mauricio Pochettino had 2 meetings. He comes out of the first meeting, which apparently was with Boehly. Sorry,
a private dinner, just him and Boehly.
Oh, it would have been lovely. What do you think, Nate?
It would have been lovely. Probably Italian, I'd go for.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I reckon so.
He's a Argentinian, isn't he?
He likes a barbecue, but I don't think Boehly would have taken him for barbecue because once you've done a Pochettino barbecue, you can't really do it elsewhere.
No.
You
go to the Italian. They'd have gone Italian. They'd have had a nice coq au vin.
Yeah, I mean that's French, but don't worry about that. Yeah.
Well,
don't worry about that.
Don't worry about it. So they went for a meal. Boehly gave him the reassurances that at the time the entire fan base was after, in terms of, we wanted Pochettino. We were happy with how things were going under Pochettino. Then the sort of revelation breaks that Pochettino's out the door. And
about 6 days later, by the way, after that meeting. Yep.
But there was another meeting in between, wasn't there?
There was. So there were, I believe, 2 days of talks at Cobham, in which Eghbali was there. Todd Boehly was meant to be there, but actually he conference called in. apparently. He wasn't actually there. He was in the States, personal engagement, couldn't make it. And then the sporting directors, Winstanley and Stewart, there as well. And they're the ones that ultimately have the decision-making power to be able to sack a manager. Like, they're the ones that are providing the account. What's it come out and transpired, interestingly, mate, is that they had an 18-page dossier describing the reasons why Pochettino should have been sacked, the directors of football. And obviously Eghbali, and we don't know this for sure, but Eghbali was definitely sort of very important in bringing those directors of football in. I have a feeling that Christopher Vivell, do you remember him?
No.
Christopher Vivell was a guy that we brought in from RB Salzburg within the Red Bull group, I believe.
Yep.
Might not have been Salzburg, but, don't quote me on that. But within the RB group, he came in as a director of football. He wanted the big signings. He wanted the João Felixes, all of the big names across Europe. He was known as a sort of the big name guy. Whereas Winstanley and Stewart had a different plan. They wanted to get the young players. So they all were working together. Vivell was meant to be a group guy, and then these guys were meant to be Chelsea guys, and it all changed. But I think Vivell was a Boehly guy. And then Eghbali was Winstanley and Stewart. So they had that meeting with Pochettino.
Yep.
And I think it was very clear that Eghbali and the directors of football decided that he wasn't the guy, whereas Boehly wanted to keep him. And I think Boehly's rationale was that he wanted some continuity, and he saw the results at the tail end of the season.
And that's the thing. The funny thing is, if you had sacked him around the Christmas, New Year mark, I don't think there would have been many complaints.
No.
I'm sure the media would have been getting on to the club's back in terms of the instability, the merry-go-round of managers, and the fact that we'd then be on our, 5th, 6th manager under the new ownership. But at the same time as that, the results weren't good. The performances didn't look like they were getting better. Right. And
you were on the kickoff saying that he should be sacked.
Was I?
Yeah.
Did I say he should be sacked?
Well, you said I don't really care either way, which I think, to be honest with you, means that you're happy for him to be sacked.
I'm pretty sure I said I can take it or leave it.
I think there were moments in which you said he should be sacked.
What, on camera or off?
Both.
Listen, I say a lot of stuff. No, listen, I will openly agree. I think after the Wolves defeat, Christmas Eve.
Yeah, awful.
I think I would have probably not cared. What
was the game where I came to the kickoff and I'd been there at Stamford Bridge? Do you remember what game that was? Because that was the
funny
point
thing is, I'm pretty sure we won that game. Didn't we? Wasn't it the Brighton game?
I don't think we did win it. I remember the atmosphere being awful.
Yeah, I can't remember who it was. Might have been a Sheffield United draw or something. I can't remember.
It might have been a draw, yeah.
But either way, I think the fan base was shocked, to be honest, when Pochettino was sacked. Now, one of the things we put it down to was the fact that we believed that Pochettino had almost played hardball with the board a little bit in that meeting. And we are reading between the lines here. But I personally believe that Pochettino had turned around and said, look, happy with how things go and whatever, I am planning on using Conor Gallagher next season, so I'm going to need him here. And there was a few things like that, and I think that it almost seemed to me like a decision had been made, and from that point on, they had not expected results to go the way they had, but almost said at the same time, look, no matter what happens now, he's gone at the end of this season. We'll hold on to the end of the season. That's what happened. And obviously, since then, I think that would have almost been the fuse lit for what we're now seeing as a rift between them. So what I want to do is I want to speak about the pros and cons for both sides of the debate, because I think it's very easy to run with the narrative at the minute that Boehly is definitely the man for the job over Clearlake, over Eghbali. And I do think there's a lot of things that we can give that would go in Boehly's favour for that. Starting off, obviously, as we said, he does do the media. He will make his intentions a lot more clear. And I think in a time of instability within the club, when the fan base really don't know not only what's going on, but the intentions of the guys running us, like, look, no owner is going to come out and say, I'm not too bothered about success on the field. We just want to flip a profit and make some money. However, what an owner will come out and do is state the desire to actually win silverware and compete for Premier League titles and things like that. And I think that with Boehly, you will get that. So that's one thing that has gone in his favour. Also, a willingness to bring in big name players. Now, this transfer window just gone, that sort of skews this a little bit, because we were just seeing wonder kid after wonder kid for about 2 windows. Now, obviously, we will speak about the first window, because that first window got us in a lot of problems, and we'll touch on that. Yeah. But in the sort of 2 windows following on, we were seeing the Wonder Kid scheme sort of happen. We were seeing these young players brought in. Some of the times they were hitting, some of the times they were missing, and we will discuss that. But Todd Boehly always seemed like a man who had the willingness to go out there. And if there was, let's say, for example, a Victor Osimhen on the market and it was Todd Boehly leading the charge, as he did with Enzo Fernandez from Benfica, by deadline day, by hook or by crook, you'll probably get your man. You may overpay.
You probably would overpay massively.
Yeah, you may overpay, but you may get your man at the same time as that. Not only that, Todd Boehly showed initially the willingness to actually back a manager when he first came in. Now, a lot is made of the sacking of Thomas Tuchel, and whether it's right or wrong, I suppose we'll never know. But at the same time as that sacking, Todd Boehly did immediately come in and give Thomas Tuchel almost the reins over the transfers in that first sort of couple of months, you know. Raheem Sterling was Thomas Tuchel's number one target, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. And Boehly listened a little bit too much and had to rely on Thomas Tuchel because, as we know, he wasn't really a football man at the time.
No.
You know, he was still learning his trades, and fair play to him because he was just getting into Premier League football.
Well, we say he wasn't a football man, but another thing that goes in his favour, and I don't know how weighted this is, but it's worth mentioning, Todd Boehly has had experience running a sports club. He has had experience taking a sports club that was almost, you know, in demise at one point.
So true.
And then taking them on to be an established and title-winning side again, I think, in the LA Dodgers, wasn't it?
Yep.
So he has had experience in doing that. And obviously Clear Lake don't, and Eghbali doesn't. He doesn't come from a background of that. He was able to understand, Todd Boehly, as well, that he wasn't qualified to carry out certain roles. Now, when you had all the media, Carragher and whoever else saying, he's playing football manager, he's pointed himself managing director and sporting director and things like that.
Yeah, in the first window,
Yeah, he did, but he had the ability to be able to remove himself and then you know, recruit for those roles, and he did do that. That was a decision that it looks like he had made. And also another thing that people don't like about Todd Boehly, but I think me and you, from the smile on your face, we do like it. He fucking loves a loophole.
He does love
and
a
I
loophole,
don't mind it, mate. I'll tell you what, when it's everyone else doing it, I'll shout from the rooftops. But when it's my club doing it, I don't mind it. And if you're a Chelsea fan, you shouldn't either. Like, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, and I'll add one more on top of everything as well. I do think he actually really does care about the club. Yep. And I know that's very easy for us to say, but I do think, based on the press conferences that he does and the way that he is so good with the media, and just actually his actions, I think he's put himself right in the firing line in a position where he didn't have to be a sporting director in that first window. And he tried his best to bring in really, really good players. You look at the players that he brought in that first window, just on paper, you go best centre back in Serie A at the time, probably one of the best centre backs in Europe actually at that time, to be fair, if you look at it. Obviously that didn't work out, but you know, sometimes those transfers don't work out. Sterling, who, you know, was one of England's best wingers, you know, someone that could impact the pitch on the pitch straight away, much you know, different to the way that we're looking at things right now. You know, he was actively trying to get top class players, and he was there at the forefront negotiating the deals and actually managed to get them in. So
Cucurella, who was lighting it up for Brighton, looking really good in that Brighton side at the time.
There you go.
And yeah, there was a lot of signings that I think, and as well, like another thing that's not touched on as much is the fact that we're led to believe that Todd Boehly was interested in buying Chelsea in 2019, 3 years before the actual takeover even happened, I think. So there was an underlying desire to buy a Chelsea Football Club before it was a sort of pressing issue that needed to be done in the short term after the sanctions on Roman Abramovich. So, but there are cons around Todd Boehly. I think initially he's seen as the one that got us in a bit of a mess in that first transfer window, whether it comes to overpaying for players, whether it comes to handing out crazy wages like what was being paid to the likes of Sterling, Koulibaly, Aubameyang is another one in there.
I think if we're honest, I think even taking all of our biases out in terms of who we prefer or don't, you can say that that first window set us back.
Yeah, 100%.
I think it's a really clear, when you look at those individual players, I mean, we're only just getting rid of them now.
And then is that something to be noted? Like, if you are Eghbali and if you're Clear Lake and you're gauging the fan backlash from, you know, the sales of Conor Gallagher, Trevor Chalobah leaving and other academy players, they could well be looking at this and thinking, well, hold on, you're blaming us and you're saying that this is a Clear Lake thing and this is what we're doing. We are doing that as a direct result of what Todd Boehly did in that first window.
Yeah.
Because had Todd Boehly not had the first window that he had, do you think that the likes of Gallagher, Trevor Chalobah and other Ian Matson, other academy graduates would have definitely been sold off?
I think we never really know. This is a bit of a sliding doors moment. I don't think anyone can definitively say. But and also the other point that I'll make here, and it's definitely a con on the Clear Lake side, is they are obsessed with transfers. Like Eghbali is obsessed to a level which I don't think I've ever seen a sporting director or an owner be obsessed with, in the way that he is. He's
Swap
obsessed in the
deals
way
as
that
well.
we are. No, but more that actual business of individual transfers, trying to get the best deal, trying to get players on the cheap and then sell them on at a higher rate.
You know,
He
the 5 mil
fucking
profit.
loves it.
You know the 5 mil profit we made on Angelo.
Yeah.
Roman don't give a fuck about 5 mil, does he?
Roman doesn't find £5 million down the back of his sofa.
He wouldn't send the kids to the sweet shop with 5 mil.
He would not. He really wouldn't. So yeah, I think
Ledge.
I think it's difficult to say that the homegrown players wouldn't be sold because they just were. I feel that even if we hadn't had that catastrophic window, they'd still be trying to find a Brazilian wonder kid right now to buy. And if they need that, they're going to have to sell the homegrown players.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually a con on the other side. But yeah, that first window for Boehly, you just have to say was an absolute catastrophic failure. Like even players like that we deem to be a success, like a Fofana, for example, I think he will come good and he's playing week in, week out for us right now. I mean, look at the injury record. Look at how much we paid for him. Look at the wages that he's on. He's on 200 grand a week. So I think overall you can say that was a failure.
Now, one of the things that we're reading now is, say, for example, if Todd Boehly was able to gain majority control of the club, and I actually think that's very, very unlikely. You know, I don't think Clear Lake have got any intentions of sort of giving up their investments now. But say he would, we're reading that there would be another overhaul, right? And what that suggests to me is the likes of Stuart Winstanley, maybe even Joe Shields, they all fall on the side of Eghbali. Would I be right to assume that, or is that unfair?
I think with Joe Shields, I'm not sure. I think that might have been a joint decision. And look, the difficulty is that these are bureaucratic decisions, i.e. there is a boardroom in which there are many voters and everyone has a say. And ultimately, that might be one of the biggest things that is slowing us down at the moment, is that we're waiting for sort of like a board decision when really what we used to have was Roman and Marina sort of just going, we're going to go and do something. We're going to go and sign Havertz, or we're going to go and sign whoever we're going to sign. And that will be our guy, and we'll just go and do it. And that was the sort of, when you're in business, that's the forward thinking that you really need to get shit done.
Yeah.
You need someone
to pull the trigger.
And also, you just can't have anyone questioning you, because if you have anyone questioning you, it ultimately devalues the product. You slow yourself down, or you second guess yourself, and then you don't make key decisions. And sometimes the key decisions can be wrong. And Boehly has said that. Boehly's actually put his hands up and said some of my decisions were wrong. You know, and I respect that, because it's sort of you have to be a very humble man to be able to sort of go, I made errors in that way. Do you know what I mean?
I've never made any errors. In life.
Never in your life. No. Never. Anything close to an error? Getting me on the podcast?
No. No. Flawless.
I think something close to the error is you were going to stop doing this. That would have been a massive error.
I was going to stop.
Yeah.
So I remember turning round, and it was not long before I ever first got booked for the kickoff.
Yeah.
And I remember just being like, it's
Can't
just
be
a bit
asked.
fucking, it's just a bit much. I don't know, I can be bothered. And now look. Going to fight little Cray this weekend in Newcastle.
Yeah. Just 100,000 subscribers. Where is the play button, YouTube? Hurry up.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Can you find out what's going on?
It takes a while.
They haven't even emailed me about it.
No, it takes a while.
Okay.
Yeah. It will come, though.
Put it on your to-do list.
I will.
Right, okay, so...
Only if I can keep it.
You can have it. I think they're having it in here. No chance.
So that's Boehly. I think we've been fair on Boehly. We've given both sides to it.
So, listen, we touched on Joe Shields there.
Yeah.
Anyone that doesn't know, Joe Shields is the man that we bought in from Manchester City.
Yes.
It was Man City, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously, he has played a pivotal part in our recruitment since that first window. I don't think he was in place in that first window.
No, he wasn't. No, because they also have gardening leave. So, I don't think he would have been involved in that first window.
You get a lot of gardening done.
You do get a lot of gardening. I've seen his garden. It looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Big fan of the show.
Garden. Yeah.
Big fan of the show. Joe.
Follows.
Love your work.
Yeah. Me or Shields?
Shields.
The Shields dog.
Yeah, the Shields dog. Yeah. He
but
called you that.
yeah. When you look at some of the recruitment, like obviously some of it has a heavy Manchester City Academy influence.
It does.
And I'm all for it. I listen, the signings of Cole Palmer, Romeo Lavia, your boy Tosin Adarabioyo, who you're not too sure on, but I think is an absolute wizard in defence. And then speaking of wizards...
Can I give a hot take quickly on Tosin?
Give it.
Next summer he will be sold.
I don't think he will.
This is my hot take. Bookmark this right now. Tosin will go for 20 to 25 million pounds next summer, and he'll probably go to Palace.
I mean, 20 to 25 million pounds is not a bad price for someone you signed on a free transfer.
Yeah.
Also, your predictions from before any of these were linked. You told me that Trevor Chalobah was going to Palace when I said I believed he'd go to Fulham. You also told me that you thought Amanda Broha would go to Everton when he hadn't even been linked with Everton. You were a bit of a Nostradamus in this transfer window, weren't you?
I mean, I don't want to take huge credit that I know the future, but mate, I've got my ear to the ground. What can I say?
Do you do lottery numbers?
They call me, they go Fabrizio Ornstein Aveste.
Fabrizio Aveste. Yeah. Maybe you get sold. I don't know. I think he could. I see him ahead of Disassi in terms of pushing.
Oh yeah, he's ahead of Disassi, but that's not a high bar.
No, I know.
They're trying to sell Disassi.
I think you're ahead of Disassi at the minute. So when we talk about Eghbali, let's leave Joe Shields to one side, although I do credit him with doing some real good business for us.
Oh, I love Joe Shields.
And let's speak about Winstanley and Stewart, who are very firmly on the side of Eghbali. And obviously, I look at the transfer business done in the last couple of windows, and I completely understand that it does infuriate a lot of people. There were a lot of people who were commenting in the comment section of my videos saying, you guys haven't spoke about Angelo. He's been really good. And I'm sort of, in my head, I've always thought, well, Angelo's never going to play for us, mate. Murray Hutchinson's never going to play for us, mate. You would disagree with this, but Andre Santos is probably never going to play for us, although he has been putting up good numbers so far.
I mean, he's been player of the month again in France.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just a joke.
But it wouldn't surprise me if he never plays for us, if I'm being completely honest. Cassidy probably never played for us. But once you can separate yourself from the fact that we are bringing in players that probably won't play for us, I think you can then look at some of the dealings, some of the business, and say, do you know what? That's shrewd. I'm looking at the likes of, and non-Chelsea fans would love to banter this, but to be honest, they don't watch enough of him. I'm looking at the likes of Nicholas Jackson, who I think is going to be a top player in European football, I'm looking at the likes of Cole Palmer, bought in for cheap money. You look at the deal now that has been done for Jadon Sancho. Now, if Jadon Sancho comes and flops, at Chelsea Football Club, I still don't think 25 million next summer is even a bad price to pay for him. I think you get somewhere around that, A lot of the business done under these guys. Gusto's a great one.
Unbelievable one.
Great one.
30 million euros he was.
What's he worth
insane.
now? What's he worth? If he was to go somewhere 60,
big
double
money.
that straight away.
Easy.
And there are a lot more that are sort of in that mould.
Viega, 14 million euros.
Great bit of business.
That is insane.
Yeah.
He is so good, Viega.
Another man who's just gone out on loan, who I think will skyrocket in sort of market valuation this season, is Ugochukwu. I think that he'll do well. I think that
I'd love to see him back. I'm really worried that we're just going to sell him. I think he's so good.
I think he is good.
We should have kept him.
We'll see him.
We should have kept him.
I could very much see any of the clubs that stay up that have come out of the Championship. I could see one of them maybe going in for him. I know they've had their sort of FFP issues, but Leicester, you could see an Ugochukwu there, and maybe in Ndidi role or whatever. So I think so.
Even Dewsbury Hall, by the way. Sorry, 35 million euros, 30 million quid.
I think a lot of people would disagree with you on that.
I think that's. I mean,
or is
business.
that making a judgment on too short a notice?
I think it's too short a time, but also like everyone wanted Dewsbury Hall. I mean, Brighton were in for him. A lot of other teams were in for him. A lot of people wanted him.
Yeah, but we don't want Brighton. Well,
I mean, we do. I think that's quite clear. We really do want Brighton players, to be honest with you.
Brighton targets, maybe.
Yeah. Some Brighton players.
I mean, he's been good at Brighton. I don't see Kieran Dewsbury Hall really breaking his way into this first team at the moment.
No, but just on a deal, let's just talk about deals.
Yeah.
Like, that's a decent deal.
No, they do. They get some good business done, and I think that a lot of it does go under the radar, or maybe sort of just unpraised, almost. But there are problems with Eghbali in terms of him being the front man of it. And one of the main things is, look, there are plenty of clubs that have owners that aren't media facing and don't give interviews, you know.
Can I give a few more pros?
Give a few more pros.
Before we go too hard on him. I really like that he is investing in the analytics and data side of the business. And I think he is going to find some targets. I think what Eghbali sets himself as is the kind of man that identifies talent when they're very young and brings them through and they can then be elite players. Like, I think Eghbali would say that he signed Pies and Esteval. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think he's the sort of the driving force with Winstanley and Stewart, who are his guys, that are trying to find that next level of talent. And, you know, in the market that we're in right now, we can't go and sign Vinicius Junior level players. We can't go and sign, you know, Haaland level players. It just wouldn't work. We couldn't afford their wages, etc. Right? But what we can try and do is find the next level of talent. And I think with Esteval and with Pies, those level of signings, we're getting signings for the future that are like world-class level. Like, people are going on about these guys where they're
Neymar.
like, yeah, they're saying that he's that level. Like, he could be the next Vinicius Junior. So that's what I like about them, is they're looking at the analytics and the data. So that's what I really respect from those guys. So I think he's been very, very strong on that side of it. But there are, to then go on your other side and to go on the cons of that, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. I think he is obsessed with transfers in a way that I think is actually slightly detrimental to the long-term future of the club. Because I think basically what he's doing is he's just trying to run it. He's just trying to run it like a business almost. Yeah. And we're seeing like PSR is important to buy and sell players. And especially the homegrown players are really, really important. But what we miss right now is that sort of Lampard era, you know, Tomori's, the Abrahams, the Mason Mounts being played week in, week out for Chelsea and actually looking really good. We obviously didn't win anything in that time period, but my God, we had something. There was a heart of the club. And actually, I don't think we've had a period.
We laid the foundations for a Champions League win in that period.
We did. And also, I don't think we've had a connection to the playing staff and the club as much as we did in that era. It's certainly nothing like that now.
I do think the point I made about not being sort of media facing, not doing interviews and things like that, I actually think it's massive, because I think that, listen, it's like any relationship. It could be a romantic relationship. When you are on the same page and when you talk about things and when you openly admit your intentions with things will always feel better. You'll always feel like there's more stability. You'll always feel like there's more trust in a relationship. And I think that the problem is, with Todd Boehly, we've heard him come out and speak about his desire to win, his desire to give the fan base good memories, things like that. And as far as I can remember, there hasn't really been any comments in that sort of mould that we've heard from Eghbali. And I do think that a lot of worries would be quashed very, very quickly if we had an Eghbali come out and basically say, you know, look, this is my intention. I'm bringing these players in because we understand, and look, I understand the transparency of what I'm about to say would never normally be there from an ownership. But if we're being realistic, if you was to come out and say something along the lines of, we understand that, look how good Arsenal have been, look how good Liverpool have been. At this moment in time, while Pep's there, no one's really competing with Manchester City. So what we are doing is we are building a squad that is ready to take off the second Pep leaves and everyone, and then we are ready to take off and have the most talented young squad in the Premier League that's ready to compete for Champions Leagues and Premier Leagues and things like that. And people might hear that and think, well, that's bullshit, you know. But at least it would show a signal of intent, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. It would. And look, if you look at the strategy in itself, it's a strategy that I would probably do if I was playing Football Manager, by the way, because I think it's exciting, and I think bringing through young players and actually seeing them grow and develop and getting players where they could become world-class players, bearing in mind we're never going to be able to sign players that are world-class right now in the current market and the PSR restrictions that we have. I think it's the only way that you can play it, right? But to go from an aging squad, and look, I think Chelsea fans do forget, actually, that we were in a period of stagnation for a long time at the end of the Roman Abramovich reign, right?
Yeah.
We won trophies, fair enough, but we hadn't won a league in a very long time. Where, you know, what's our highest finish in the last 7 years? Like third? Yeah.
Third.
So
the Champions League win really does paper over some cracks. Some real significant cracks.
It did. And that was actually the moment in which I realised that the strategy had to change. We couldn't have these Galactico signings on huge wages that were still not performing. And fair enough, there were managerial changes and instability, and there were other factors going on around the football club at the time, which made complete sense why we weren't right up there challenging for league, especially in the Man City and Arsenal era that you're describing. But We have to move on. We can't just make the same mistakes over and over again. And building the squad in the way that we're doing is the only way that you can actually now go and compete against Man City, because we need to sign young players on decent wages that grow and develop with the club. We might have to sell a couple of them. We might have to sell, a huge level player to be able to afford the next sort of tranche of people as well, right? But that's the only way you can actually go and compete with these teams now.
And this is the thing, right? This is the thing. Like, people will laugh at me, but when you look at the window of opportunity that, say, Arsenal have got at the moment, in terms of they're sitting there pretty with Manchester City, almost matching them, but ultimately falling short. I called it a window of opportunity there, because unless they are able to do the sort of business that Chelsea seem to be doing, when we talk about the likes of Estavio, Kendrick Pires, players like this, and obviously the likes of Cole Palmer, Melo Gusto, these ones that have come in that aren't on astronomical wages, right? You have only got a window of opportunity, maybe 4 or 5 years, that you can actually do that before you need to rebuild, right? And if you look at, say, an Arsenal, for example, within 3 years, that club's going to need a rebuild.
Look at Liverpool. Liverpool is the better example, to be fair. Like, they are now, I mean, Virgil van Dijk is talking about signing a new contract, but arguably his powers are waning now. He's in that period
Trent
now
Alexander
where they're just trying to
on his last year, Mo Salah on his last year.
So that's the thing. Like, they're going to need to have a huge transition, and they're not. Are they ready to do that? Have they got the funds and the ability to spend in the way they're going to need to?
Well, there you go.
We're not even talking about Alisson, by the way. Yeah. Alisson's on his way out.
He's on his way. When you speak about the rebuilding process, all right, people will go, well, hold on, you don't need to rebuild because you haven't built anything yet. But I think those people would be somewhat being... I think that they may believe it deep down, but I think if they were to scratch the surface a little bit, they would see that we definitely are building something. We have tremendous strength in depth. We have a lot of talent within this squad, and we've got all of them on a wage structure that I understand a lot of people don't care about. But ultimately, football, as much as we hate to admit it, me and you don't like to admit this, it is a business.
It's a business.
And we have a wage structure there that we can keep these players happy, because we can be significantly increasing their wage each season in line with their performances, and at the same time not putting ourselves in a position where, if it doesn't come right for these players, we are going to need a huge rebuild. And I think as you say, we're seeing a lot of the mistakes that were made early on during the new ownership. We're seeing a lot of that ironed out now. A lot of these players are now moving on, players that people didn't think we'd be likely to ever find suitors for. We are finding suitors for, and I think more will be to come. Ultimately, how do you think this pans out? Do you think there is a truce that can be made here, or do you think the days of a consortium leadership with Boehly, with Eghbali, with Clearlake, do you think that's gone now, and we will see one sort of party come to the front?
Well, look, I think the first point that I'll make is this. I don't think that what we're discussing right now is a pure, like, it's one side or the other. Like, this is the only way this is the only thing that could happen. Like, one side takes over and that's it, right? There are multiple scenarios in which, they agree different power structure. Boehly says, I want to own this side of the club. I want to run this, and potentially there's some posturing going on right now behind the scenes. Like, I think in business, if something is irreconcilable, sometimes that is the case. But also what could be happening right now is just a pure negotiation tactic. Like, you could be looking at these guys leaking information to the public, which, by the way, stuff like this, you wouldn't usually be public information. So the fact that we even know about it means that one side's talked to a bit of the media and tried to convey their side of the story. And that's ultimately what comes out of these things. A side has a negotiation tactic. So, for example, let's just say it's Eghbali leaking it. I don't know, anything about this, by the way. But if it's Eghbali side leaking it, they have majority control. They leak it to the press going, we've fallen out, we want to take over. Other investors come into that side and go, yeah, I've got the money, I could buy out Boehly, I want to be involved in the club. And then the sort of the momentum goes. It indicates that to the other investors that they're interested, and it says to Boehly, we're interested in buying your stake. And then Boehly can start thinking about what he wants to do, for example. And that works both sides, right? But there is a negotiation side of this where it's like, we are putting our stall out. Eghbali saying, I am the transfer guys. I brought in Winstanley and Stewart. Chelsea fans, trust me because I'm the one that should be in charge. Whereas Boehly's going, I'm the front man of the club. I care about the club. I've got a 20 to 30 year vision. This is they're saying their stalls out, right?
Yeah.
So not that it means anything for the public, because the public, quite frankly, unfortunately, as much as we want it to, Chelsea fans, we don't have a say in this. And that's the saddest part of this, is that we don't. But both of them are trying to get the best deal possible, because ultimately, if they're gonna do what they want to do, and what the public, they've released to the public, they're going to have to buy out one of the other sides. So if you're a minority owner in Boehly, you're going to have to get a huge amount of money. Like both of them are going to have to raise billions, but Boehly's going to have to raise a lot more than he would that Clearlake would have to. So he's got to go out there, find all that money, find the investors. And quite frankly, if you're asking me to look in my crystal ball again and look at the predictions that I said that, Trev would go to Palace and, it predicted every single one right. I'd be, no, I'm joking. I definitely don't get this right. But what I think is there's no way that minority owner can take control, because if Clearlake would have to basically say, yes, we're happy to sell the club.
She's just never going to do.
Why would Eghbali, who's trying to take control of the football club right now, why would he do it? It just wouldn't make sense. There would have to be a boardroom level discussion, and also there would have to be other investors that would all be open to selling. If you're asking me to look in my crystal ball right now, the two most likely scenarios is it just stays the same and we have a few more arguments because, quite frankly, neither side can raise the money, or Clearlake raise the money that they need to do to get Boehly out. Those are the only two scenarios. And if you're asking me for my most likely scenario, I would say status quo is the most likely scenario right now, because to raise that kind of cash, I think is so difficult. And also, like, quite frankly, I don't think the differences are so irreconcilable that they can't come to some kind of agreement. Like, I know the Pochettino thing was important, but is Boehly going to walk away from his like $1 billion investment, him personally, because of a managerial sacking?
No.
I don't think he is. So I think it's a lot of chat, and I think the media love it because it's exciting.
Any
it's a story.
Negative story about Chelsea is always going to sell.
Yeah, but I don't think ultimately this ends with a very quick sale. Let's put it that way. I think we're going to stay the same for at least a year minimum.
Well, I'm very, very glad that I had you in today, because people have been messaging me saying like, are you going to cover this? You can do a video on it. And obviously I've got my home set up and whatnot, but I'm not the brains of Britain.
Yes,
let's be honest.
But before we go though, if you had to pick one, who would you want?
I'd go Todd frickin' Boehly, man. I would go Boehly and Shields.
Oh, wow.
Boehly and Shields. Boehly and Joe Shields. You boys do the business.
I love it.
I like the Americans, man.
Yeah, me too.
I like the Americans.
Many of the American viewers.
Where's Eghbali from? Iranian?
I think no. Eghbali's from LA, I think.
Is he?
Yeah.
I thought I read that he was born in Iran.
Yeah, but he's American.
Yeah. Well, either way, we like the Americans. We like the Iranians. We like them all, mate. You can all subscribe. No, I don't know. Listen, as I say, I'm not the most business-minded. That's what I've got Mr. Aveste here for. But I did want someone who was able to break it down in a lot more detail. So you've definitely done that. People, please do me a massive favour, but do yourself a favour. Head over to Josh's channel. It is linked in the description to this video. Subscribe to his channel so that you can see all his content coming out. And next, we're about to record right now, which will be music to some of these lot's ears, because, as I say, the business side, it can get a little bit boring for me. You're clearly more interested in that sort of stuff. Rightly so. I know you are a bit more business-minded than me. But we're now going to talk about some of the football that happens on the pitch, because we are going to preview Saturday night's game against Bournemouth. So keep an eye out for that. That will be dropping tomorrow. I will see you all in the next one.